Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're doing a March reading wrap up of all the things that I finished in March as well as the things that I'm still in the middle of. Yeah, I did a lot of skipping around between books throughout March. I technically read 14 books in March. I'm looking at my reading journal right now that has the things that I'm keeping track of. 8 of those books were children's books. The first book that I finished in March was A Court of Frost and Starlight. I think I gave it 4 stars. I would honestly bump it down to 3. I do have like this really cute Frost and Starlight spread that I did in my reading journal that I'm really proud of, honestly. I kind of enjoyed learning more about Moore. I can read you some of the quotes that I added to my reading journal. Say something, think of something to say. Yeah, that's like when Moore was talking to her father in the night court, and I felt like it finally allowed me to relate to her a little bit. I thought Asriel's chapters were really boring, and Cassian's. Yeah, I got some good feelings throughout the book, but I really don't remember much of it at all, and I just feel like I could have not read it. But low-key, I might not be the best person to take advice from when it comes to ACOTAR anymore because I'm slowly like falling out of the series. I tried to read Silver Flames this month and I did not succeed. That's one of the books that I got like 100 pages into and have not picked up for a few days. So I think I'm just like phasing out of my ACOTAR phase. So the second book I read in March was Heartstopper Volume 2, which I checked out on Libby, so I don't have it with me. I thought it was cute. I really don't remember much from Heartstopper. It all kind of blends together for me, the first and the second and the third volume, because I started the third volume where they go to Paris, somewhere in France, and I was just so bored. I don't know, I think I'm in like a bit of a reading slump this month because most of the books that I've been reading have become extremely boring to me. I really liked it at first, but it's just not the vibe I'm looking for anymore. I don't think I read much other graphic. Oh no, this is not true. I read 7 Scaredy Squirrel books. 5 of them were just regular picture books, and 2 of them I believe that I read were graphic novels. I ate up the Scaredy Squirrel series so quickly and I enjoyed every second of it. It's definitely not for everyone. I forced my boyfriend to sit on the couch and I read it to him like from my iPad, and I was like swiping like he was a kindergartner, and he was not super into it, but for me it was just lovely. The ones that I read were just the title Scaredy Squirrel, Scaredy Squirrel Makes a Friend, Scaredy Squirrel at the Beach, Scaredy Squirrel in a Nutshell, which is one that I think was a graphic novel, Scaredy Squirrel at Night, Scaredy Squirrel Has a Birthday Party, and Scaredy Squirrel Gets a Surprise, which was the other graphic novel. And I think there's one other Scaredy Squirrel picture book on Libby. Yeah, I got all of these from Libby, and it probably was like 3 hours of my time that I just spent like reading picture books and these graphic novels for kids. But it was just so cute. Like every plot line is about how much Scaredy loves his routine and how he's so organized, and then he has like one of his little friends comes in and starts messing with things, or he has a mission to go do something and he just like freaks out whenever there's some sort of thing that's outside of his routine, or somebody like puts things out of order, and he like plays dead a bunch. But then he always like comes back and learns something and is able to either incorporate this into his new routine or figure out a way to do it and not freak out, which I feel I related to it so hard. I also struggle when I don't have a routine, even though I'm not good at keeping routine, so then I'm constantly like making myself struggle. But I find that having routine eases my anxiety so much, and I just felt very connected with Scaredy the squirrel. I love the art style too. There's a bunch of maps and plans, and it's just adorable. The next book that I read is I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. I think I showed this in my last book haul, and I did read it I think like the next day after I filmed that. I got it on audio as well so that I could listen to her narrate it, because I heard that she had narrated it herself and that it was really good. So I listened along while I read. I loved this book. I was so fascinated to see all the things that went on behind the screen when it comes to her child stardom and her relationship with her mother, which translated into a shaky relationship with her own self-esteem and like the way that impacted her relationship with men. Even if you have a good relationship with your mom, I think this still can feel very relatable for a lot of people. And even if you don't relate, I think it's fascinating. And it's weird to say that about somebody's life. It was beautifully written. She's a great storyteller. The chapters are extremely short. All of them are between 1 and 3 pages. So It went by super fast. I read this in a day. So the second book, I don't have the physical copy anymore. I had borrowed it from a friend, and then I got the audiobook on Libby at the same time. But I do have the second book just for visual purposes. I finished City of Bones in March. I know everybody loves Cassandra Clare, and I feel like once I get to her later series, I will be able to appreciate her more. But for right now, I'm like most of the way through City of Ashes. Like, I don't have that much left, and I'm still just forcing myself. Like, I'm just trudging through. I'm not super interested. I tried watching the show to kind of get myself more into it. I watched like the first episode on Hulu, and I really wasn't into that either. I think that the world is really cool, and the creatures, I'm just not connected to any of the characters at all. I'm not invested in the Clary and Jace love story. I don't really like Jace. I don't really like Clary. I definitely don't like Alec or Isabel or really any of them. They're all just pretty flat to me. I'm just reading it for the fantasy world and hoping that the characters will become more appealing later. I love Katie's reading on BookTube, and she says that the characters are really great and rich in the Infernal Devices. So I'm thinking that after I finish this, I might just skip to the Infernal Devices series because I am not invested in any of the characters of the Mortal Instruments at all. And I don't want to be the one Cassandra Clare hater on earth, but this is also just feeling like a 3-star. Like, actually, maybe City of Bones was 2, and then this was 3, because I am enjoying this more than City of Bones, but still just I just feel very lukewarm about it. Lukewarm, get it? The werewolf. Then I read a graphic novel called Song of the Court. I don't have the physical version of it anymore, but it was super cute. I loved the art, I loved the color scheme. So Song of the Court was about this cat who is a farmer, but she loves playing violin. Well, she discovers that she loves playing violin because she is selling some of her produce at the market, and the princess of the realm, who's a bunny, comes in and she's like, I'm looking for vendors and performers for my birthday party. And she sees the cat with her violin that she was actually on her way to sell. And so the cat gets roped into playing violin for this princess's birthday party. I feel like they kind of fell in love a little bit, although it's a little unclear. I guess because it's for like such a young audience, they didn't make the love plot explicit in any way, like, but I'm assuming they're a little bit like they fancy each other, and it was just really sweet and wholesome and about following your dreams and your passions. And there was a time where the cat was like struggling between farming and violin, and she like fell into this depression kind of where the color scheme turned like into lots of purples and blues. So I highly recommend that graphic novel. It was super cute. Next, I read Coraline. I watch a lot of inspirational talks by Neil Gaiman, and his advice as an author is like really great, but I realized I had never actually read one of his books. I think I might have read part of Coraline when I was really young, like 8 years old or something, but I didn't remember any of it. And this is actually my little sister's favorite book. I went to Barnes and I got this, and it was so much fun. This is also illustrated. I've seen the movie multiple times and I love it, but reading the book was really fun too. I love the way that Neil Gaiman writes. I find that I get like really inspired by authors who write in like not flowery language and just get to the point, but still make you care a lot about these characters and make it feel like a really beautiful book, even though they're being kind of blunt, because I struggle with that, trying to make sentences sound pretty, where when I read something like this, I realize like my sentences don't need to really be pretty to make my story pretty and touching. Coraline is amazing. It's about a little girl named Coraline who finds a secret door in her house that leads to a magical dimension where she has an other mother and an other father who are duplicates of her real parents, but more sinister in a kid-friendly way. Honestly, kid-friendly. This book was scary. My heart was beating and I was nervous, even though I know how it ends. I give this a 5 out of 5 stars. This is a really fun book, especially the cover looks so cool. It's got these like reflective hands with needles in them because Coraline's other mother and other father have buttons for eyes, and in order for her to stay there, they tell her that they need to sew buttons in her eyes, which is terrifying in itself. But I'm so excited to read more by Neil Gaiman, like some of his adult works, and I actually just got a subscription for that masterclass website, curated thing for getting more advice from other authors that I really admire, and Neil Gaiman is on there, so I might even make a video about taking his masterclass and how that helps my writing. The final book that I completed this month was my favorite book of the month. I'm trying to do a review video for this, but I can barely even get coherent thoughts because it just messed with me so much, boggled my mind, and made me obsess over it for days. And that book is Bunny by Mona Awad. 5 out of 5 stars. 5 out of 5 stars. I loved this book so much. I had seen it on TikTok for a little while, like 6 months ago. And I didn't even think twice about picking it up because some of the YouTubers that I like didn't like this book. Nobody gave like really detailed descriptions of the story, so I just didn't even know enough about it to think like, oh, maybe I want to look for myself and see how I feel. I just ignored it, honestly. And I was watching this one YouTuber who I can't remember the name of. I just found her videos like a week ago, and she did this bookshelf tour, and on her bookshelf she had a Bunny shrine where she had like 10 different copies of Bunny, like the hardcover, the paperback, the UK paperback, the special edition collector's version, and she just loved Bunny a lot. And I was like, interesting. I actually just saw this on the shelf at the bookstore that I go to, and I was like, maybe the next time I go in, like, I'll pick that up. So I went in, I picked it up, I didn't touch it for about 2 weeks, and then when I went back to that bookstore again, I saw another copy of Bunny that was way cooler. It was the UK paperback, and I was like, oh my gosh, that cover rocks. And I wanted to buy it, but I was like, I don't even know if I'm gonna like this book. What if I hate it like everybody else does? So I went home and I decided to start reading it, and I thought, okay, this is pretty short. I can get at least halfway through this, and if by tomorrow, wherever I am, if I think that I like it, I'll go back and I'll buy the other one too, so that I can have like the cooler cover. It was at a secondhand bookstore, so they were pretty cheap. So I read about half of it. I stayed up like all night reading this book. It really roped me in. And then when I went back the next day to the bookstore, the other copy had already sold. I asked the bookseller, I was like, oh, do you still have this copy of Bunny? And he was like, I actually just sold it an hour ago. And I was devastated because I was enjoying it so much. So basically, it's very hard to describe what Bunny is about without spoiling it. But we start with our main character, Samantha, who is in a creative writing program at a very elite university. And there is this group of girls who are also in her writing program, the graduate program, called the Bunnies. And they're called the Bunnies because they all have this communal nickname of Bunny. For example, this is on the first page. Hi Bunny, hi Bunny. What did you do last night, Bunny? I hung out with you, Bunny. Remember, Bunny? That's right, Bunny. You hung out with me and it was the best time I ever had. Bunny, I love you. I love you, Bunny. So they're really annoying and they call each other Bunny, and it's just very weird, and they're so close in a way that is strange. So the Bunnies have this thing called Smut Salon where they meet and they're doing something mysterious that we don't know, and Samantha gets an invitation to attend one of these smut salons. So that's what really like brought me into the story. I was like, what is going on at Smut Salon? Because I knew that this book was really crazy, really weird. Those are usually the words used for reviews, that it's just like strange. And I'd agree, this is a very strange book, but in the best way possible. Once she attends Smut Salon, things start happening, weird things, and this book takes on a whole life of its own. It's just so out there and creative, and I loved it. I think the messages in this book are really great. It talks about elitism and academia. I would call it a dark academia. I think that's a good genre for this. Dark academia, and it talks about friendship and loneliness. There's so much in this book that goes over your head that comes back later in a way that just changes the way that everything happened. Like, I read this book thinking I knew what happened, and then I watched somebody's analysis afterwards and realized I had missed something, and it became a whole other story. Like, the story, if you miss like one detail, you are reading a completely different book. And I just love that, how just having one little sentence be included or excluded from your reading can change the entire experience. And since I've read it, I feel like I need to reread it. Like, after I read it the next day, I started it over because I felt like I'd missed so much because I missed that detail. And reading it for the second time was just mind-blowing, just seeing how much that the author gave us from the start of what was going to happen, that I had no idea, because how would you until it happens? But it really is just a masterpiece. It's a work of art. I give this a 5 stars, and I'm so excited to read more Mona Awad. I'm gonna read her other book, 13 Ways to Look at a Fat Girl. That book is also at the bookstore I go to, and the bookseller told me that he really liked it. So that will definitely be in my April wrap up. I even loved Bunny so much that I made a bullet journal spread out of it, and I have a video on my channel where I make this. It's a time lapse. So if you're interested to see how I put this together, please go ahead and watch that. I did this with watercolor, and this is just one of the quotes from the book that I thought was just freaking hilarious, that one of the bunnies says to Samantha, you'll understand if you read it, so please, I desperately implore you to read this book. If there's one book that you take away from the stack of books I read throughout March, make it this one. And really quick, I thought I would just mention all the books that I got like halfway through this month, but I haven't finished. So I'll go into more detail about them, I guess, next month, or maybe in a reading vlog or something, but just honorable mentions. We have Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. I have read 55% on my Kobo, and I really am enjoying it. Then we have What We Talk About When We Talk About Love by Raymond Carver. Also really liking this. This is a collection of short stories. The short story called I Could See the Smallest of Things and Mr. Coffee and Mr. Fix-It. Love those two especially. I just can't read much of this at a time without falling into a deep depression, so have to read them in bite-sized pieces because they can be pretty sad. Then I was in a fantasy mood, so I picked up the 5th season. It was just taking a lot of brain power. All of those pink tabs are things that I didn't understand or had to look up about the world. It's a very complex fantasy world, so I'm not very far into that. And I only got 100 pages into A Court of Silver Flames. I love Nesta and I love Cassian. I think I'm just getting bored with Sarah J. Maas's villains and the world. Mostly the villains. We just got introduced to this like wizard guy who I think is going to be the villain of this book. And I was so underwhelmed by Amarantha and by Highburn in the previous books that as soon as I read his name, I was just like, I don't even care. I don't even want to know about him. I just want to know about the characters because I feel like the plot of her books is very lacking, but the characters are fun. The last thing that I didn't finish, but I will soon, is Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, the illustrated edition. I'm really close to the end of this. I've already read this book like 4 or 5 times. I just was rereading it because my boyfriend got me the first 3 books in the illustrated by Jim Kay editions. So I'm on like almost on page 200, and I think it's like 235 pages. It's so gorgeous. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.